Top of the hour, he's Doc Emrick, NHL on NBC. Following last night's Game 1, the Lightning looked like they were the better team for the first two periods, and then it looked like they played not to lose. And Chicago strikes quickly and ends up taking Game 1. How surprising was that momentum shift there, Doc, last night?
Quite surprising. I think, the way the Lightning came out was impressive, and the Blackhawks started to wrest a little bit of the game away from them in the latter part of the first and in some of the second. But it did strike me as something that their coach had said, that we are a team that can shut a team down, and we do that a lot on the road, but we haven't done it very well at home. I don't know that the instruction went out to do just that, but it seemed collectively, and sometimes this happens when you have only one guy on your team that's won a Stanley Cup and half your team is under 25, that you're going to collectively tighten up like that. And it's worked for them before, but whether it was a matter of strategy or not, we'll learn later on today with, when we get a chance to chat with them all. But, it was something surprising, and you don't need to give the Blackhawks many opportunities.
No.
They're old hands at this, and that's where experience takes over, and their goaltender was spectacular.
Your role in doing play-by-play, how much can you focus on the mood or momentum of a game?
Usually Eddie and Pierre are more attuned to that. I'm so busy trying to follow the puck and identify players that I'll get a grasp of it at times, and I got a grasp that the Blackhawks were starting to get the game back under control late in the first. But a lot of times we'll talk during the intermission, and I'll wind up adopting what they have seen, and I'll notice it more myself based on what they've had to say.
And momentum's a tricky thing, too, whether it's from one period to the next or one game to the next. Do you buy in momentum during the Stanley Cup final?
No, I don't. I think the games wind up becoming more individualized, and we really don't need to go much farther back than this last series, where Tampa Bay came into New York and won twice in games 5 and 7. And it looked like an altogether different team at home, and they were just terrible against the Rangers in the 6th game. And so in my forecasting, the last 5 games in a row I've gotten wrong. I've had the wrong winning team. You get the feeling going in that you know what you're about and you know what they're about, and you sense who's going to win. 5 in a row. And for the record, just to really enhance my credibility, TV Guide called me last August and said, who will win the Stanley Cup? And I said, Boston Bruins. Didn't make the playoffs. But I do like the fact that Paulie's got a shirt on today. Shirts for everybody, by the way. Pick your own team. I'll make sure they get there if Fritzy can send me the sizes. And if I can get 5 of those Hershey Stanley Cups, they're similar to your silver one there, but they stand about 6 inches high. They're solid chocolate made by the Hershey Company. And for Fritzy, we should tell him that it's 105 carbs if you eat the whole thing and 1,000 calories.
What shirt do I want, Doc?
I don't know.
You tell me. How about this? I'll leave it up to you.
Okay, just have Fritzy send me the sizes. I'll choose you one. It'll probably be the Charlestown Chiefs from Slapshot.
I like that. I'm fine with that. I'll fly the colors.
You're acerbic enough you could fit on that team.
What role would I play, knowing my personality, if I was on a hockey team?
Probably the second-level enforcer, middleweight enforcer, because back then there were guys that fought. We've only had 9 fights in 84 games this year. Then that's normal for us now. But 25 years ago, there would have been 80 fights in 80 games. It was just a different sport back then.
But why is fighting down,
I would say
Doc?
From the Slapshot era, and by the way, we are doing a telecast of the Pittsburgh-Tampa Bay preseason game from where Slapshot was filmed in Johnstown, Pennsylvania in September. And that's going to be exciting for all of us because we're all old enough to remember the film.
Why is fighting down? Why has the game changed?
It's changed a lot in the last 20 years, and I think, perhaps enforcement is one thing. The other thing, too, is that shields are now mandated for anyone coming into the league. And so where we had the helmet rule in 1979, and eventually nobody came in without helmets anymore, and the last vestige of it was Craig McTavish in the mid-'90s was the last guy that played without a helmet. The same thing with the face shields now. There's not much to throw a punch at. It doesn't mean they still don't try. But there's just a lot about ruined hands and the fact that teams teams don't really value it as an asset that much anymore, especially in the playoffs. Regular season, there will be more fighting, but in the playoffs, it's 1 out of every 10 games you'll see a fight.
He's Doc Emrick, NHL on NBC. Game 2 coming up on Saturday. They don't like to be called the Ning, right? They're the Bolts.
Yeah, yeah. Bolts is a little more strong, I think, than the Ning would be. Oh. Yeah, they like that, and they're going to be a team. If I had to pick out of the Final Four this year, a team that has the best chance of getting back because of salary cap issues and everything else, it would be the Lightning, because only Brendan Morrow is an unrestricted free agent over the summer. I mean, the Blackhawks have a ton of guys whose contracts are up, and so this may be their last kick at the can for a while with this group. They're smart enough that they get a pretty good roll of support players that continue to come up in their ranks, and that's why they're going for their third title in 6 years. But I think the Bolts are going to be a team that'll be back on a regular basis because they're largely young and they're getting better all the time.
Has anybody ever hired you for like a kid hockey game, like a bar mitzvah, if they wanted to bring you in as the play-by-play voice to call a hockey game?
No one's hired me, but fortunately, 2 years ago during the lockout, Brian Williams had a weekly show that was on Friday nights, I believe it was, and he said, Doc's probably driving his wife nuts with nothing to do at home. Let's send him out to do a kids game, and so we went to Troy, Michigan, and did an under-12 girls game, and it was one of the best nights I ever spent in a rink because these were kids that it was an activity for them. Mm-hmm. And some of them were in ballet, some of them played violin. One of them wanted to be a vet and had hermit crabs as pets. But it was just a collection of young ladies that this was another thing that they would do, was play hockey and learn from it. And it was a fun night to just call out the names and numbers. The names you could get as long as the ponytails didn't cover the nameplates on the back of the jerseys. That happened some.
We were talking about best shooter in basketball, the history of basketball. Now, there's a difference between a shooter and a scorer with the NHL. So the best shooter, if you were going to refer to it as that, the best shooter you ever saw of the puck.
Wow. Well, I would say just for sheer velocity, probably Zdeno Chara of the Bruins. Not because he's won the shooting contests at the skills competitions, but just because his shot is enormously hard. He's 6'9", 250 pounds, and he can really bring it. So for letting a shot go that scares people and being a big shooter, that would be it. There are so many accuracy shooters and skilled scorers that I've seen over the years. I usually, when asked to name the great players, Gordie Howe comes to mind, so does Bobby Orr, so does Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux. Those are some of the top ones I remember, and they were all scoring players. But it's difficult to pick out just one.
Wayne Gretzky said that when Mike Bossy of the Islanders would get the puck in a certain place on the ice, coming down the ice, he would get ready to come back on the ice. He knew Bossy was going to score. He just said that he had never seen anybody that accurate as Mike Bossy.
I'm glad you mentioned him because, in any list he should be there. Just because of his cleverness with the puck, and you knew that if he had all kinds of shots in his arsenal. He had a good slap shot, but he had a wrister that would just scorch. Yeah, and he was part of that great dynasty that we won't see dynasties like that with the salary cap anymore. We might see a team like Chicago that every once in a while or every other year can win the championship, but we are probably never going to see 4 or 5 in a row anymore.
Doc, enjoy your days off there, and we'll be watching on Saturday.
I'll choose your shirt.
Yes.
And I realize that Paulie has already chosen one, so I'll replicate his or get maybe the enemy of the Chicago Blackhawks, maybe a St. Louis, which I know he won't wear, but maybe he'll give to somebody.
Thank you, Doc.
Have a good day.
All right, that's Doc Emrick. Baron Gifts, I love that.